He got a 2:47 a.m. call from a hospital about his best friend's daughter. She was in trouble, and her stepfather wasn't helping. 16 years ago, he'd promised her dying father he'd protect her. So he called his motorcycle club, and by dawn, 97 bikers were ready to ride 620 miles to keep that promise. Tom Hawk Daniels didn't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after the war. Not after losing Jake. And especially not after the phone rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that smelled like engine oil and regret. He was elbow deep in a 1973 Harley-Davidson when his cell phone vibrated across the workbench, spinning like an angry hornet. The caller ID made his hands freeze mid-wrench. St. Mercy Hospital, Social Services. Hawk's heart dropped into his steel-toed boots. He hadn't heard from anyone in that area code in 3 years, not since Jake's funeral. Not since he'd made that promise over a flag-draped coffin, while a 13-year-old girl with her father's gray eyes had squeezed his hand so hard he thought his bones would crack. "This is Hawk," he answered, his voice rough as gravel. "Mr. Daniels?" The woman's voice was young, strained, professional, but cracking at the edges. "My name is Rebecca Chun. I'm a social worker at St. Mercy Hospital in New Mexico. I'm calling about Lily Morrison." The name hit him like a fist. What happened? Hawk was already moving, wiping grease from his hands onto his jeans. "Is she hurt?" She's stable now. "But Mr. Daniels, she's been admitted with injuries consistent with." Rebecca paused, and Hawk heard papers rustling, heard her gathering courage. "We're calling it a domestic incident. Her stepfather brought her in claiming she fell downstairs, but the patterns don't match, and Lily, she gave us your name. She said you promised her father you'd." "I'm coming." Hawk was already scanning the garage for his keys. "Don't let anyone take her out of that hospital. You hear me? Nobody. Mr. Daniels, her stepfather is. I don't care who he is." Hawk's voice carried the weight of deserts and battlefields and promises made to dying men. "Jake Morrison saved my life in Kandahar. He took a bullet meant for me. The last thing he asked before he died was for me to watch over his little girl. So I'm asking you, Miss Chun, one more time. Can you keep her safe until I get there?" There was a long silence. Then, "How fast can you get here?" Hawk looked at the clock, calculated distances, and made a decision that would change everything. "Give me 18 hours. And Miss Chun, thank you for calling me." Not everyone would have. After he hung up, Hawk stood in the silence of his garage, surrounded by the skeletons of motorcycles he'd been rebuilding. His reflection stared back from a chrome mirror, 52 years old, face weathered like canyon rock, a scar running from his left eye to his jaw from an IED that should have killed him but didn't, because Jake had thrown himself on top of Hawk instead. He pulled out his phone and opened the group chat for the Steel Wolves MC. 96 members spread across 3 states. Brothers and sisters who'd ridden through dust storms and bad divorces, who'd shown up for funerals and weddings, who understood that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was forged in fire and sealed with loyalty. Hawk's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't a casual ride. This was serious. This was the kind of thing that could bring trouble, the kind that followed bikers like shadows, the kind that made people lock their doors and clutch their pearls. But then he remembered Lily at Jake's funeral, how she'd looked so small in that black dress, how she'd whispered, "Uncle Hawk, will you still visit me?" And how he'd promised yes, even though her mother's new husband, some cop with cold eyes, had steered her away before Hawk could say more. He started typing. "Lily needs us. Jake's daughter. Hospital in New Mexico. Domestic situation. Wheels up at 5 a.m. This isn't optional. This is family." The responses came in like thunder. "I'm in. Diesel. Count me there. Reaper. For Jake. Maven. Rolling out. Smoke." Within 10 minutes, all 96 members had responded. Within 20 minutes, Hawk's phone was ringing with questions, offers of supplies, legal contacts, people rearranging their lives because a brother had called and a promise needed keeping. Hawk looked at his garage one last time, at the half-finished bikes and the photos on the wall. One of him and Jake in their army days, young and stupid and invincible. Jake was grinning at the camera, arms slung around Hawk's shoulder. No idea that 10 years later, he'd bleed out in Afghan sand saving his best friend's life. "I'm coming, brother," Hawk whispered to the photo. "I got her." He grabbed his leather jacket, The one with the steel wolf's patch on the back, a snarling wolf head with the words "loyal" to the end, and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. His Harley sat waiting, chrome gleaming under the single garage light like a patient beast. As Hawk kicked the engine to life, the roar echoed through the empty Arizona street. Somewhere in New Mexico, a 16-year-old girl was lying in a hospital bed, probably terrified, probably thinking no one was coming. She was wrong. 97 bikers were about to prove that some promises are kept, no matter the cost. The ride had begun. Dawn broke over the Arizona desert like a wound, all red and gold and angry. By the time the sun cleared the horizon, the parking lot of Hawk's garage looked like a scene from a movie, except this was real, and the stakes were a teenage girl's life. 97 motorcycles lined up in formation. 97 engines rumbling like distant thunder. 97 people who'd dropped everything because family called. Hawk stood at the front, surveying his crew. There was Diesel, a 6'4" mountain of a man who ran a successful construction company and coached Little League on weekends. Maven, a grandmother of 5 who'd ridden across country twice and still wore her late husband's dog tags. Reaper, whose real name was Marcus and who taught high school math when he wasn't wearing his cut. Smoke, a former Marine who'd served 2 tours and now volunteered at veteran centers. These weren't the criminals the news made bikers out to be. These were mechanics and teachers, nurses and contractors, people with mortgages and kids in college. But they all wore their colors with pride, and they all understood that loyalty meant something. Listen up. Hawk's voice cut through the engine noise. The rumbling died to a low purr. We've got 620 miles ahead of us. That's New Mexico by late afternoon if we push it. We stop once for gas, once for food. We ride tight, we ride smart, and we don't give any cops a reason to pull us over. What's the play when we get there? Diesel asked, arms crossed over his massive chest. We protect Lily. Whatever that takes, Hawk paused, choosing his next words carefully. But we do it right. No violence. No threats. We're not giving anyone ammunition to paint us as the bad guys. Her stepfather is a cop. He'll be looking for any excuse to have us arrested. Maven spoke up, her voice sharp despite her 70 years. So we're just going to stand around looking pretty while some badge-wearing bastard tries to take that girl back? No, Hawk said, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. We're going to stand our ground legally. I've already called Chains. A murmur rippled through the group. Everyone knew Chains. Marcus Chains, Wellington, former Steel Wolf who traded his bike for a law degree 15 years ago, but never forgot where he came from. He was the best defense attorney in 3 states and had gotten more than a few club members out of tight spots. Chains is meeting us at the hospital. He's already pulling strings, filing paperwork. We're doing this by the book. Hawk's gaze swept across every face. But make no mistake, that girl is not leaving that hospital with her stepfather. Not while we're breathing. The crowd roared approval, fists pumping the air. As they prepared to ride out, Hawk caught Reaper checking his phone, frowning. What is it? Just did some digging on the stepfather, Reaper said quietly. Officer Daniel Morrison. He kept the last name after marrying Lily's mom. Decorated cop, 15 years on the force. Community pillar. Coached youth football. Volunteers at church. Hawk's jaw tightened. Perfect cover. There's more. Reaper's voice dropped lower. Lily's mom died 8 months ago. Car accident. Single vehicle crash on a clear day. The implication hung in the air like poison. Can you prove anything? Hawk asked. Not yet, but I've got friends and records. Give me a few hours. Hawk nodded grimly. This was worse than he'd thought. They weren't just dealing with an abusive stepfather. They were dealing with someone who knew how to work the system, who understood evidence and procedures, who could make things disappear. Mount up, Hawk called out. The engines roared back to life, a symphony of chrome and gasoline and defiance. Hawk took point, and the convoy fell in behind him, a river of leather and steel flowing out onto the highway. As they hit the open road, Hawk felt the familiar meditation of the ride settle over him. Mile markers blurred past. The desert stretched endless and golden. Behind him, his family rode in perfect formation, a statement of purpose that made other drivers pull over and stare. Somewhere ahead, Lily was waiting. Somewhere ahead, A confrontation was brewing that would test everything they stood for. Hawk twisted the throttle harder, the speedometer climbing. The wind tore at his face, carrying away doubts and fears. He thought of Jake, of promises made and blood spilled. He thought of a little girl who'd grown up without her father and was now trapped with a monster wearing a badge. The highway stretched before them like a challenge. And the steel wolves answered. By the time the sun reached its peak, they were crossing into New Mexico. By the time shadows started lengthening, St. Mercy Hospital appeared on the horizon. The real battle was about to begin. St. Mercy Hospital had never seen anything like it. The rumble started as a distant vibration, like an earthquake that wouldn't stop. Nurses paused mid-step. Patients near windows pressed their faces to the glass. Security guards reached for their radios, uncertain whether to call for backup or just watch. Then they came around the corner. 97 motorcycles moving like a mechanical army, chrome flashing in the afternoon sun, engines creating a sound that rattled windows 3 floors up. Hawk led them into the parking lot with military precision. He raised his fist, and instantly, the formation split, bikes peeling off in organized rows, filling every available space. Within 2 minutes, they were parked. Within 3, the engines cut off in unison, leaving behind a silence so sudden it felt violent. Then 97 bikers dismounted and stood beside their machines, waiting. The hospital's automatic doors slid open, and Hawk walked through first alone. His boots echoed on the polished floor. Every eye in the lobby turned to watch. The massive biker with the scarred face and the cut that read President across his back. Behind the reception desk, a young nurse's hand hovered over the panic button. "I'm here to see Lily Morrison," Hawk said quietly, pulling off his sunglasses. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "My name is Tom Daniels. A social worker named Rebecca Chun should be expecting me." The nurse swallowed hard, glanced at her computer screen, then at the security guard who'd materialized at her elbow. I need to verify." "Tom." Everyone turned. Rebecca Chun stood by the elevator, clipboard clutched to her chest. She was younger than Hawk expected, maybe 30, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and exhaustion written across her face like a second skin. "Miss Chun," Hawk crossed the lobby in 3 long strides. "Thank you for calling me." Rebecca glanced past him at the parking lot visible through the glass doors, an ocean of motorcycles and leather-clad figures standing in silent formation. "You brought quite a few people." "I brought family." Hawk kept his voice low, meant only for her. "Where is she?" Rebecca hesitated, then gestured toward the elevator. "4th floor, room 412. "But Mr. Daniels, we need to talk first. There are complications." They rode up in tense silence. When the elevator doors opened, Hawk saw 2 uniformed police officers stationed in the hallway, their hands resting casually on their belts. One was talking on his radio, shooting suspicious glances their direction. Rebecca led Hawk to a small consultation room and closed the door. "Lily has a fractured wrist, 3 broken ribs, and significant bruising. The injuries are consistent with," she paused, "professional mass cracking, with sustained abuse. This wasn't one fall. This was months, maybe years of violence." Hawk's hands curled into fists. Where was everyone? Teachers? Neighbors? Somebody must have seen something. Officer Morrison is very well respected in the community. He's careful. Lily wore long sleeves, missed school for family emergencies, and he always had explanations ready. Rebecca's voice hardened. But yesterday she showed up at school with visible bruising on her neck. A teacher called it in. Morrison brought her here himself, claiming she'd fallen, thinking he could control the narrative. But she told you the truth. She whispered your name to the ER nurse. Said her father told her if anything ever happened, to find Tom Hawk Daniels. That you'd promised. Rebecca met his eyes. The problem is, Morrison is demanding her discharge. He has legal custody. And despite our concerns, without concrete evidence or an ongoing investigation, we can't hold her past today. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Hawk's feet. Today? You're telling me I rode 620 miles, and he can just walk out of here with her tonight? Unless we can get an emergency order. Yes, Rebecca pulled out her phone, showing him a text message. He's already texted me 3 times. He knows you're here. Security called him the moment you arrived. He's on his way now with discharge paperwork and possibly more officers. Hawk stood, began pacing the small room like a caged animal. His mind raced through scenarios, each one ending badly. If they tried to physically stop Morrison, they'd all be arrested. If they let Lily leave, she might not survive another week. "Can I see her?" he asked finally. Rebecca nodded. 5 minutes. That's all I can allow without family consent. Room 412 was dimmer than the hallway, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. The girl in the bed was almost unrecognizable from the child at Jake's funeral. She'd grown taller, her face thinner, but those gray eyes, Jake's eyes, were the same. "Uncle Hawk." Lily's voice cracked, disbelieving. "You actually came?" Hawk crossed to her bedside, his throat tight. "I promised your dad, didn't I?" Then this 16-year-old girl who'd been trying to be strong for so long finally broke, tears streaming down her face. "He killed my mom. I know he did. And nobody believes me." The words hit Hawk like bullets. Everything had just changed. Hawk barely had time to process Lily's words before Rebecca appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "He's here," she whispered urgently. Morrison just walked into the lobby with 2 other officers and a lawyer. Hawk squeezed Lily's hand once, a promise without words, and stepped into the hallway. Through the window overlooking the parking lot, he could see his crew still standing by their bikes, patient as statues. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Diesel, inside. "Stay ready." The response was immediate. "Copy." When Hawk reached the lobby, he understood why Rebecca looked terrified. Officer Daniel Morrison stood in the center of the room like he owned it, 6 feet tall, perfectly pressed uniform, square jaw, and the kind of smile that belonged on campaign posters. Beside him, 2 uniformed officers flanked a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Hospital security hovered uncertainly, caught between authority figures. Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes when he spotted Hawk. "Tom Daniels," Morrison said, his voice carrying across the lobby. "I've heard about you. Jake's old war buddy, right? Appreciate you checking on Lily, but I've got it from here. Family business." Hawk walked forward slowly, aware that every word, every gesture would matter. "Lily asked for me. That makes it my business." Lily's 16 and confused. She had an accident, got scared, and called out for a familiar name. "It happens." Morrison's tone was reasonable, sympathetic even, the voice of a concerned parent. "But I'm her legal guardian, and she's coming home with me tonight." "With a fractured wrist and 3 broken ribs?" Hawk kept his voice level. "That's one hell of an accident." The lawyer stepped forward, smoothing his tie. "Mr. Daniels, I'm Richard Kessler, Officer Morrison's attorney. Unless you have legal standing in this matter, you need to step aside. My client has full custody rights and medical release forms signed by attending physicians." "Funny thing about those forms," Hawk said. "They usually require the patient's consent if they're over 14. Did anyone ask Lily what she wants?" Morrison's smile tightened. "My daughter is traumatized and not thinking clearly. That's why parents make decisions for their children." "She's not your daughter." The words came out harder than Hawk intended. "She's Jake Morrison's daughter. You just married her mother." Something flickered in Morrison's eyes, something cold and dangerous quickly masked by wounded offense. "My wife died 8 months ago. I've been raising Lily alone since then, doing my best in an impossible situation. And now you show up with a gang." "A motorcycle club," Hawk corrected. "A gang," Morrison continued, his voice rising slightly. "Trying to intimidate hospital staff and interfere with a lawful guardian's rights. I could have every single one of you arrested for harassment." The 2 officers behind Morrison shifted, hands moving closer to their weapons. The message was clear. Hawk felt the situation teetering on a knife's edge. One wrong word, one aggressive move, and this would explode into something that would destroy any chance of helping Lily. Then he noticed something. Morrison kept glancing at his watch, checking the time, anxious despite his confident facade. He was in a hurry. "What? Tell you what," Hawk said slowly, an idea forming. "Why don't we let Lily decide? She's 16, almost an adult. Let's go up there together, no lawyers, no uniforms, and ask her where she wants to go." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I don't need permission to take my own daughter home." "Then you've got nothing to lose by asking her." Hawk held his ground. "Unless you're afraid of what she might say." The lobby had gone silent. Hospital staff pretended to work while listening to every word. Even the lawyer looked uncomfortable. Morrison took a step closer to Hawk, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in every courthouse in this state. I've put away bikers like you for less than parking violations. You want to make this a fight? I'll bury you and every single one of your criminal friends. We're not the ones who hurt her, Hawk said quietly, meeting Morrison's eyes. But I think you know that already. For a brief second, Morrison's mask slipped. Hawk saw pure rage flicker across his face, the real man beneath the uniform. Then the automatic doors slid open, and a voice called out, Did somebody order a lawyer? Everyone turned. A man in an immaculate three-piece suit strode through the entrance, briefcase in hand, silver hair perfectly styled. Behind him, visible through the glass doors, 96 bikers had moved from the parking lot to form a silent wall outside the hospital entrance. Marcus Chains, Wellington had arrived, and the legal battle was about to begin. Morrison's confident smile finally cracked. Chains didn't walk, he commanded space. Every eye in the lobby tracked him as he crossed to Hawk, set down his briefcase with a decisive click, and extended his hand. Tom, been too long. Then he turned to Morrison with a smile that could cut glass. Officer Morrison, I presume? Marcus Wellington, attorney at law. I'll be representing Mr. Daniels and Miss Lily Morrison in this matter. Morrison's lawyer, Kessler, stepped forward. This is highly irregular. The girl has legal representation through her guardian. Does she? Chains pulled out a document from his briefcase. Because I have here a petition for emergency guardianship filed 1 hour ago on behalf of Miss Morrison, citing credible allegations of abuse and requesting immediate investigation. Judge Patricia Herrera has agreed to an emergency hearing via video conference. He checked his watch. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The lobby erupted in murmurs. Morrison's face flushed red. You can't. I can and I did. Chains's voice carried the weight of courtrooms won and lost. Until that hearing, Lily Morrison remains in protective custody at this hospital. Any attempt to remove her will be considered violation of a pending court order. Kessler snatched the document, scanning it rapidly. His expression darkened. This is a delay tactic. This is due process, Chains corrected. Something your client should appreciate, being a law enforcement officer. That's when Hawk noticed them, news vans pulling into the parking lot. 3, then 4, then 5. Cameramen spilling out, reporters checking their makeup in side mirrors. Morrison saw them too. His jaw clenched. You called the press. I didn't have to. Chains gestured toward the windows where reporters were already filming the wall of bikers standing silent vigil outside. 97 motorcycles descending on a hospital? That's news. The question is, what story do you want told? As if on cue, a reporter and cameraman pushed through the entrance, microphone already extended. Officer Morrison, can you comment on allegations? Morrison held up his hand, instantly shifting into public relations mode. This is a private family matter being exploited by outside parties with no legal standing. My daughter is receiving excellent care, and I'm working with hospital administration to bring her home safely. Is it true she has injuries consistent with abuse? Another reporter called out, shoving through the growing crowd. My daughter had an accident. These allegations are unfounded and hurtful. Morrison's voice carried righteous indignation. What you should be reporting on is how a motorcycle gang has shown up to harass a grieving family. With respect, officer, a reporter interrupted. Sources say the girl specifically asked for Tom Daniels. Why would she do that if she felt safe at home? Morrison's composure cracked for just a second. Hawk saw it. The flash of panic, quickly masked. Chains leaned close to Hawk. We need to get ahead of this narrative. You should make a statement. I'm not good with cameras, Hawk muttered. You don't need to be good. You need to be honest. Chains straightened Hawk's collar. Tell them why you're here. Make it personal. Make it real. Hawk looked through the glass at his crew, standing like sentinels. At Maven, who'd ridden through the night despite her arthritis. At Diesel, who'd left his construction site mid-project. At Reaper, who'd probably have to use sick days and deal with angry administrators. They'd all come because he'd asked. Because a promise meant something. He walked outside. The cameras pivoted toward him like hunting dogs catching a scent. Microphones thrust forward. Questions overlapped into noise. Hawk held up one hand, and surprisingly, they quieted. "My name is Tom Daniels," he began, his voice rough but steady. 16 years ago, I served in Afghanistan with Jake Morrison. He saved my life, took a bullet meant for me. Before he died, he asked me to watch over his daughter if anything ever happened. Hawk paused, emotion tightening his throat. 3 years ago, I made that promise at his funeral. Last night, that little girl, who's not so little anymore, called for help. "Are you accusing Officer Morrison of abuse?" a reporter shouted. "I'm saying a child asked for help, and I came. That's all." Hawk's eyes swept across the cameras. "We're not here to fight. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here because family matters. Because promises matter. Because sometimes a child's voice gets lost in the noise, and somebody needs to make sure it's heard." Behind him, the bikers stood motionless, a unified statement of purpose. The reporters ate it up, already typing headlines on their phones. Inside the lobby, Morrison watched through the glass, his expression unreadable. But Hawk caught him pulling out his phone, making a call. His body language screamed urgency. Whatever Morrison was planning, it was happening now. Chains appeared at Hawk's elbow. That was perfect. Social media is already exploding. #promise kept is trending. "Good," Hawk said. "Because I have a feeling Morrison's about to make his move." He was right. By nightfall, St. Mercy Hospital had transformed into a fortress of wills. The Steel Wolves set up camp in the parking lot, folding chairs, coolers, sleeping bags. They weren't leaving. Maven organized food runs. Diesel coordinated watch rotations. Reaper disappeared into a quiet corner with his laptop, digging deeper into Morrison's background. Inside, Chains commandeered a corner of the hospital cafeteria, spreading documents across 3 tables like a general planning war. Hawk sat across from him, nursing terrible coffee while Chains explained the battlefield. "Morrison's playing this smart," Chains said, highlighting sections of legal text. "He's filed a counterpetition claiming you're an unfit guardian with no legal standing. He's citing your criminal record." "I don't have a criminal record," Hawk interrupted. "You do now. Apparently you were arrested for disorderly conduct in 2019. Charges dropped, but it's on record." Chains's eyes narrowed. "Ring any bell?" Hawk's jaw tightened. "Bar fight. Some drunk college kid grabbed Maven inappropriately. I stepped in. We settled it outside of court. Convenient that Morrison dug that up in 3 hours." Chains made a note. "He's also claiming the motorcycle club has known gang affiliations. He's painting you as dangerous criminals attempting to kidnap a minor." "That's bullshit." "That's strategy." Chains cut him off. "Morrison's been a cop for 15 years. He knows how to build a case, how to control narratives. Right now, he's creating reasonable doubt about your intentions while positioning himself as the protective father defending his daughter from criminals." Hawk felt his frustration rising. "So what do we do? We prove he's lying?" Chains pulled out another document. "This is where it gets interesting. I pulled Morrison's financials, public record for law enforcement. In the past 8 months since Lily's mother died, Morrison has liquidated 3 investment accounts, taken out a second mortgage, and transferred nearly $180,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands." The number hit Hawk like cold water. Why would he need that kind of money? That's the question. Chains tapped the paper. Either he's planning to run, or he's paying someone off. Either way, it suggests he's worried about something coming to light. Hawk remembered Lily's broken voice. "He killed my mom." "I know he did." "The car accident," Hawk said slowly. "Can we get those records?" "Already requested. Should have them by morning." Chains leaned back. "But here's the problem. Even if we prove financial irregularities, even if we raise questions about the mother's death, none of that immediately proves Lily is in danger. Morrison can claim the money transfers are personal investments, that his stepdaughter is traumatized and making false accusations because she's grieving. So we're back to square one." "Not quite." Chains's phone buzzed. He read the message and smiled grimly. "Reaper just sent me something interesting. Apparently, Morrison coached youth football for 3 years. Quit suddenly last season. No explanation. So I made some calls. Found 2 parents willing to talk off the record. Their kids reported aggressive coaching that left bruises. Nothing was formally filed because Morrison convinced them it was normal contact sports injuries. But parents remembered. Parents always remember when something feels wrong. Hawk's hands clenched into fists. He's been hurting kids for years. Allegedly. Chains corrected, the lawyer in him precise. But it establishes a pattern. Combined with Lily's injuries, the financial irregularities, and questions about the mother's death, we're building a picture. A knock on the cafeteria doorframe made them both look up. Rebecca Chin stood there, looking exhausted and frightened. "I need to show you something," she said quietly. "But if anyone asks, you didn't get it from me." She handed Hawk a manila folder. Inside were medical records, not Lily's, but her mother's, from the 3 years before her death. 2 broken fingers, a concussion, bruised ribs, all explained as accidents, all treated by different hospitals in different towns. "She was running from him," Rebecca whispered, "trying to get help without leaving a paper trail in one place. But I cross-referenced her medical history. It's all there." Hawk stared at the documents, rage building in his chest. Why didn't anyone see it? Because he's careful. Because he's respected. Because the system isn't designed to catch people who know how to work it. Rebecca's voice cracked. "I'm risking my career showing you this, but that girl upstairs doesn't have anyone else." Chains was already photographing every page. "This changes everything. If we can prove systematic abuse of the mother, we can argue Lily is in immediate danger." "There's something else," Rebecca added. "Morrison requested Lily's medical records be sealed. Said it was for her privacy, but he's trying to control what the court sees." "Can he do that?" Hawk asked. "He already did. 2 hours ago." Rebecca checked over her shoulder nervously. "But I made copies before the order went through." Chains stood, gathering documents with renewed purpose. "Get some rest, Tom. Tomorrow's hearing is going to be brutal. Morrison will come with everything he has, character witnesses, colleagues, probably half the police force." "Let him," Hawk said, his voice hard as iron. "We've got the truth." "Truth doesn't always win in court," Chains warned. "But it's a damn good start." Outside, the first stars appeared over the parking lot where 96 bikers kept watch. Inside, a 16-year-old girl slept fitfully, guarded by nurses who'd quietly started believing her story. And somewhere in the night, Officer Daniel Morrison made phone calls to people who owed him favors. The morning would bring revelation. The hospital conference room felt smaller than it was. Too many people, too much at stake. A laptop sat open on the table, its camera pointed at the assembled crowd like a judgment eye. On screen, Judge Patricia Herrera arranged her papers, her expression unreadable behind silver-rimmed glasses. Hawk sat beside Chains, feeling out of place in a borrowed dress shirt. Across the table, Morrison sat perfectly composed in his dress uniform, medals gleaming. His lawyer, Kessler, had a stack of character references an inch thick. Behind them, crammed into every available space, stood reporters, hospital staff, and 3 uniformed officers Morrison had brought as moral support. Outside the door, Diesel and Maven kept watch, while the rest of the crew maintained their vigil in the parking lot. "Let's begin," Judge Herrera said crisply. "This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary guardianship of Lily Morrison, age 16. Mr. Kessler, you represent Officer Daniel Morrison." "Yes, Your Honor. And I'd like to state for the record that this entire proceeding is irregular and unnecessary. Officer Morrison is a decorated law enforcement officer with 15 years of exemplary service." "Save the character witnesses for later," the judge interrupted. "Mr. Wellington, you're petitioning for emergency guardianship on behalf of Mr. Daniels." "Yes, Your Honor. Based on credible evidence of ongoing abuse and immediate danger to the minor child." Morrison's jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm, the picture of a wronged man bearing false accusations with dignity. "Let's see this evidence," Judge Herrera said. What followed was 90 minutes of legal warfare. Chains presented medical records, Lily's broken bones, her mother's mysterious injuries, the pattern spanning years. Kessler countered with accident reports, Morrison's spotless record, testimonials from fellow officers calling him a devoted father. Morrison testified with practiced emotion. "Your Honor, my stepdaughter is grieving. She lost her mother 8 months ago, and she's angry at the world. I've tried to help her, get her counseling, but she's pushing me away. And now this man," he gestured at Hawk, Someone she barely knows shows up with a gang and tells her what she wants to hear. That someone else is to blame for her pain. Mr. Daniels has known Lily since she was born, Chains countered. He was her father's best friend and made a deathbed promise to protect her. A promise made 16 years ago to a dead man, Kessler shot back. That doesn't grant legal standing or prove Officer Morrison is unfit. Hawk watched Morrison, studying him. The man was good, too good. Every answer perfectly calibrated, every emotion precisely measured. He'd rehearsed this. Then Judge Herrera asked the question that changed everything. I'd like to hear from Lily herself. Is she able to participate via video? Morrison's face went carefully blank. Your Honor, my daughter is heavily medicated and traumatized. She's awake and coherent. Rebecca Chin spoke up from the back of the room. And she's requested to speak. Kessler stood. Your Honor, subjecting a traumatized teenager to. It's her life we're deciding, Judge Herrera said firmly. Bring her in. 2 nurses wheeled Lily into the room. She looked smaller than Hawk remembered, pale against the white hospital gown, her casted wrist cradled against her chest. But when her eyes found Morrison, they burned with something Hawk recognized from his military days, the look of someone who decided they had nothing left to lose. Hello, Lily, Judge Herrera said gently. You don't have to do this if you're not ready. I'm ready. Lily's voice was soft but steady. She turned to look directly at Morrison through the screen. I need to tell the truth before he makes it disappear like everything else. Morrison leaned forward, his voice concerned. Sweetheart, you're confused. He killed my mom, Lily said, and the room went silent. I don't have proof, but I know. She was planning to leave him. I heard them fighting the week before she died. She told him she'd found something, some documents, and she was going to the police. Lily, honey, your mother's death was investigated, Morrison began. By your friends. Lily's voice cracked. By cops who believed every word you said. But I know what I saw. The night before she died, you were in the garage for hours. And the next day, her car's brakes failed on a straight road she drove every day. Kessler was already objecting, talking about grief-induced delusions, but Hawk saw it. Morrison's mask finally slipping. Just for a second, his expression went cold and flat, and Hawk saw the real man underneath. There's more, Lily continued, pulling something from her pocket, a USB drive. Mom hid this in my room 3 days before she died. She made me promise not to look at it unless something happened to her. It's bank records. Proof he was stealing from the police evidence locker and selling it. That's where all his money came from. The room exploded. Morrison lunged forward, but the officers behind him grabbed his arms. That's fabricated. She's lying. But his panic gave him away. Judge Herrera's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Officer Morrison, you're ordered to remain seated. Mr. Wellington, I'm granting emergency custody to Mr. Daniels pending a full criminal investigation. Morrison's face twisted with rage. This isn't over, he hissed, staring at Hawk. But it was. The sunset painted the New Mexico sky in shades of amber and crimson as Lily walked out of St. Mercy Hospital for the last time. She moved slowly, still healing, one arm in a cast, and supported by a nurse on each side. Behind her came Hawk, carrying her single backpack, everything she'd asked for from the house she'd never returned to. Chains followed, still on his phone coordinating with prosecutors who were very interested in that USB drive. But it was what waited outside that made Lily stop in her tracks. 97 motorcycles lined the hospital driveway in perfect formation, creating a corridor of chrome and leather. 97 bikers stood beside their machines, not a single engine running, just silent respect for a girl who'd found her voice. Maven stepped forward first, her weathered face soft with understanding. She held out a leather jacket, smaller, fitted for a teenager, with a patch on the back that read Steel Wolves, family above an embroidered wolf protecting a pup. Every wolf needs a pack, Maven said gently, helping Lily slip it on over her cast. Welcome home, kid. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. You don't even know me. We know enough, Diesel rumbled, his massive frame somehow gentle as he adjusted her collar. You're Jake Morrison's daughter. That makes you family. And we protect family. Hawk watched from a few steps back, his throat tight. This was why he rode. Not for the freedom or the rebellion or the image, but for this. For moments when loyalty meant something real, when promises were kept, when a scared kid learned she wasn't alone. Ready to ride? He asked Lily, offering his hand. She looked at his scarred face, at the bikers surrounding them, at the media cameras capturing every moment. Then she looked back at the hospital where, somewhere inside, Morrison was being processed and fingerprinted and read his rights, where his perfect mask had finally shattered. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Arizona for now. My place has a guest room. It's yours as long as you need it. Chains is working on making the guardianship permanent, but that'll take time. We'll figure it out together." Hawk paused. "Your dad would have wanted you safe. That's all that matters." Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. "Uncle Hawk, thank you for keeping your promise, for believing me when nobody else would." "Always," he said simply. She climbed carefully onto the back of his Harley, settling behind him. Hawk felt her arms wrap around his waist, tentative at first, then tighter, like someone holding onto something solid after years of drowning. "All right, Steel Wolves." Hawk's voice carried across the parking lot. "Let's ride." 97 engines roared to life in perfect synchronization, a symphony of power and purpose that rattled windows and set off car alarms. But this time, it wasn't intimidation. It was celebration. They pulled out slowly, Hawk leading with Lily behind him. The formation reformed around them, a protective escort that stretched half a mile down the highway. Diesel and Maven flanked them. Reaper rode sweep, making sure nobody fell behind. The rest filled in between, a wall of loyalty on wheels. Cars pulled over to watch them pass. People held up phones, filming. A few even waved. As they hit the open highway, Lily leaned closer to Hawk's back. He felt her relax slightly, the tension of months, maybe years, starting to ease. The wind tore at their clothes. The sun sank lower, turning the desert gold. And for the first time since that phone call at 2:47 a.m., Hawk allowed himself to breathe. They'd won. Not perfectly. Morrison would face trial, but he had money and connections and might find ways to reduce his sentence. The investigation into Lily's mother's death could take years. There would be therapy sessions and legal battles and difficult days ahead. But right now, in this moment, they'd kept a promise. They'd given one girl her voice back. They'd proved that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was forged in loyalty and sealed with action. By the time they crossed the state line into Arizona, stars were beginning to appear. The convoy rode on through the gathering darkness, headlights cutting through the night like a river of light. Somewhere ahead, Hawk's garage waited. A guest room that would become Lily's sanctuary. A new life built on the foundation of an old promise. In his rearview mirror, Hawk caught Lily's reflection. She was looking up at the stars, and for the first time in what might have been years, she was smiling. Behind them, the hospital disappeared into the distance. Behind them, Morrison's empire crumbled. Behind them, a nightmare ended. Ahead, the highway stretched endless and full of possibility. The Steel Wolves rode into the darkness, 97 strong, carrying one girl towards something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope.